and go directly over and speak with Janet Olive to recommend that be the source for the funding, because it's a small amount of money, and we felt the sheriff would be very friendly towards funding this small amount out of the seizure monies, which, as I understand, they're having some trouble spending.
Well, that's quite a situation. I hadn't even talked to you about this item, and that's the same conclusion that I came to, is it be better served through the sheriff's office to maybe disseminate this type of information. As we're looking at posting of the county law in regards to growing a marijuana, this might be a way to take it one step farther and to provide information on how to provide for clean, secure water. So I would wholeheartely concur with you to pursue that other aspect and use these funds more in the way that you've designed. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Supervisor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think since Supervisor Wattenberger asked you to sort of address this issue of the project number 8 that received a 0 recommendation, I think it would be good, since the others, with the exception of one, you are recommending some level of funding. So maybe you could just give us a very quick review on project number 9 and why that one was also recommended for 0 funding.
Well, it was kind of equipment heavy, and it would involve setting up surveillance cameras, as I recall, to view to establish the wildlife that are there. And our feeling was that it should be very readily known the wildlife species that are present on that property. It's unlikely that there are species that are not generally known, such as a Pacific fisher showing up or some very, very rare animal. We felt they could accomplish the same by looking at animal tracks and talking to local biologists, Department of Fish and Game, and could easily establish the variety and get a sense of the numbers of fish and wild or animals that are on the land without spending money for elaborate surveillance cameras.
Thank you.
We felt it wouldn't produce any new information.
Okay. Supervisor Delmar, are you ready to go?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. In looking at the budget, there's the total appropriations that are budgeted is about $55,000. Total revenues are $17,000, which means we're dipping into the Fish and Game fund balance to the tune of almost $38,000. And that's kind of been the pattern. That fund balance is limited, and that will dry up and go away here at this rate very rapidly. So my concern is obviously putting the funds towards projects that really we can see an immediate and a greatest bang for the buck. The project number 1 is that type of project. It's short $2 grand. Project number 4 is funding the California Department of Fish and Game for what they should be doing anyway. I have a problem with that. Fish and Game has their own money. They can fund their own project to do that. It's not that it's a great idea, great approach, but I don't think we should be funding it out of our funds.
Which project?
Number 4. So, and I have a concern with some of these other projects that are not necessarily immediate benefits. They're all good projects, but I'm looking, since there are limited funds available, and we're taking out 38 grand out of a fund that's about 100,000. It's not going to take. It's take a lot to dwindle that down to nothing. So, I would like us to, personally, I would be more favorable towards the ones that really have a direct and immediate impact, and let those funds last a little bit longer at this rate. But if there's not an agreement on that, at least I would recommend that at a minimum we don't fund project number 4, and we put $2,000 more towards project number 1, and throw the balance into the fund and try to extend it at least a little longer.
Thank you,
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Pinches.
I will support any project that's physically actually doing something to help our fish and game. I'm not for more studies and whatnot. You know, it's these fish studies. Every river is studied to death, and there's no fish. So, you know, number 3, the Wallace Steelhead project. There's rescue and rearing. You know, that probably maybe should be pumped up a little bit. Number 1 is actually doing something to provide fish and game, you know. The back one here, the Black-tailed Deer Association is doing something, but a lot of these, I'm not for doing any more studies on things. I don't think that's really the level of our local fish and game. I think we're, you know, we know the information. We just need to do something to help the problem. And so one issue that I'd like to bring up, though, when it comes to our deer herds, and I've always tried to bring an emphasis on our deer herds, because deer is probably, of all the fish and game that we have out there, deer is probably the single game species that brings in the most tourism and revenue into Mendocino County. And we always kind of treat it on the back table. So one of the problems with our deer herds is the predators, and maybe it would be appropriate to put a stipend to our animal damage control program every year. I think that would probably, that might be facing some federal cuts. So that's one option if we do, as Supervisor Delbar said, if we kept a little bit in reserves there, if we need some to maintain that program, it might be prudent at this time to hold some of this back.
Well, we did fund the Kai Rod and Gun Club at number 1. That was fully funded as per their request. They're allowed to request 5,000. They only requested 3,000. We're funding 3,000.
Oh, it said requested 5,000.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. There's a typo on my copy here.
So could we pump that up to the 5,000?
Well, you're talking about not wanting to spend too much money, and then you're talking about increasing the amounts we're granting. I would point out we do very carefully vet this, and we have a very high, in my opinion, pretty wise commissioners. So if we come before you and we start redoing all these budgets, it's sort of opening up a fourth layer in this process. But that is your authority.
Supervisor Delbar?
Well, while I understand Mr. Bell's comments, I think the key word is it's advisory committee. And my preference would be to fully fund number 1, so that's adding 2,000 back to that. And agreeing with Supervisor Pinches that, you know, studies and surveys are all fine and dandy, but when you're talking about limited dollars, I'd rather see it put to something that you know you're going to get some results right away. And I would, personally, I think I would, again, everything, the understanding that they're all good, I would eliminate number 6, number 7, and number 10, thereby returning 13,000 back to the fund for future use.
I would point out number 10, Mr. Martin's here who can comment upon it. He was a proponent of this. This is going to be an effort to find out whether whether sport anglers off our coast can fish in deep waters, deeper than, right now we're limited to fishing under those waters. This will be an experimental fishery to find out if there's a viable sport fishery in water deeper than that, and that could bring a considerable amount of tourist dollars. I will touch on the MLPA, the salmon closure, and some other issues after we discuss this, but that's a pretty unique approach, is to find out if there is a viable sport fishery in those deeper waters. Okay,
Please, Mr. Martin, please state your name for the record, please.
My name's Jim Martin. I'm a County Fish and Game Advisory Commission member, and specifically on that rockfish proposal, that would really help the party boat fleet in Fort Bragg. And right now we're looking at no salmon season, and we're looking at a very short rockfish season, and the purpose of this is to see if we can fish deep water and avoid some of the overfished species that are constraining our inside fishery. So this is tourist dollars in our pocket. And on the issue of the grant that we're advising you to give to the Fish and Game, these are night vision goggles that are going to be used to bust abalone poachers primarily, and you're getting a lot of money in the county right now